Today is Sunday, January 31st, 2016. This is the second and final day of our weekend Endless Path session. And today I'd like to continue our conversation with the great Zhao Chu and a case in the Wumen Quan, which, like Mu, shows his very really amazing, clear teaching. The case, like the first koan in the Wumen Quan, the dog, is very brief. This is case 37. It's Zhao Chu, the oak tree in the front yard. The case goes like this. A monk asked Zhao Chu, "What is the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from the West?" Zhao Chu said, "The oak tree in the front yard." Wumen's commentary. If you can see intimately into the essence of Zhao Chu's response, there is no Shakyamuni in the past and no Maitreya in the future. Wumen's verse. Words do not convey the fact. Phrases do not embody the spirit of the mind. Attached to words, your life is lost. Blocked by phrases, you are bewildered. So, here we are, back again, once more, face to face with that old, nagging yet central question. Why did Bodhidharma come from the West? Why did that old guy make the then lengthy and perilous journey from the warmth of southern India all the way to the cold mountains of China? What was he up to? Why did he make this fierce effort, like a carp leaping against the current? Why this work? What is the meaning of what he brought? What was worth an already old man making such difficulty for himself, risking his life to start over again in a new land, among new people, without help, to present a living, non-academic Buddhism? What was so important? In short, what is the highest, deepest truth of the Bodhidharma? What is worth all that toil and sacrifice to realize? This question was often raised by many of the great Chinese Zen teachers or asked of them. It makes sense. It was to China, after all, that Bodhidharma had made his way across the sea around 500 AD. So it was quite an intimate question for them, not an abstract one. They were asking, how and why did we get this teaching of actual practice realization, and why are we, that is the Chinese back then, now doing it 200 to 400 years after Bodhidharma first got here? Remember, most of the teaching episodes of the koans actually take place in the Tang era, essentially 600 to 800 AD, long after Bodhidharma's first arrival in China. In short, it was their intimate way of asking, really, what is the meaning of the Buddha Dharma? Isn't this what we all want to know? What is the highest meaning of Zen, indeed, of the Buddha's teaching? Is it calm? Is it a smiling face in the midst of difficulty? Is it superpowers of concentration and hyper-awareness? Is it wisdom? If so, what is this wisdom? Is it compassion? If so, what does this compassion look like? The West would also, for Chinese Buddhists at the time, have had an implication of the Western paradise, not just India, the historic birthland of the Buddha. India, the land of the Buddha, had tremendous spiritual resonance for the Chinese. This was the source place the Holy Land. The Western paradise suggests something even more. Why did Bodhidharma, who was also seen as an emanation or manifestation of the Bodhisattva of compassion of Avalokiteshvara, come all the way down from the lofty, serene Western paradise to this earth, specifically to China with its profoundly earthly difficulties? What was so important that he was motivated to make that perilous journey? What indeed motivates Kanon or Avalokiteshvara to descend from realms of love and purity to help us tangled up, deluded folk? What indeed is the highest principle of the Buddha-Dharma? That's the question, as Hamlet said, and the great Zhao Chu answered, the oak tree in the front garden. This is sometimes translated as the cypress tree in the front garden or in the front yard. This is gnomic, to say the least, befuddling, and certainly not at first glance illuminating. What? The oak tree in the front yard is the highest meaning of the Buddhist teaching? Looking again at second glance, it's not so clear either. Or at the third. Stay with it. Stay with it. Breathe it. Be it. Still it seems to reveal nothing. Perhaps it is simply so brilliantly clear we can't grasp it until we become clear ourselves. There's the rub and the point. How to do that? For our knowing to be real, we must be real. For our understanding to be genuine, we must be genuine. Here lies our challenge. How do we, as Pinocchio reminds us, shift from being mere wooden puppets and become real boys and girls? How do we get free of our woodenness, our habitual responses, and the ancient conditioning that pulls our strings, without leaving us all sixes and sevens fallen into a tangled heap? How can we be real? Which means facing the possibility that we are not quite yet real now. This is always what's at stake. The truth. Maybe this is why Bodhidharma came from the West. Maybe this is a way to see highest truth. We start where we are. To review, Zhao Chu was one of the greatest of the Tang era Zen teachers in that glorious golden age of Zen. He had his first deep realization at the age of 18. At 58, he had his profound second satori. He then traveled for another 30 years, checking himself and his unfolding understanding against the great teachers of his time, as well as against monks, laymen, and laywomen. At the age of 80, he settled down and began teaching on his own. Then he taught until his death at the age of 120. The expression that other great teachers used when talking about Zhao Chu was that his lips flashed light. He did not use the stick or the shout. His revelatory words were so subtle that most of the time they came in beneath the radar. They were so ordinary that the deepest expressions of realization and the most ordinary moments of life were so seamlessly integrated you hardly knew he'd already presented the truth and moved on. Mu, the central arcanum of Zen as practice realization, is the great gift of Zhao Chu, as is wash your bowls. A monk came to the monastery and meeting the teacher said, "I'm new here." Zhao Chu said, "Have you eaten your rice?" "I have," said the monk. "Wash your bowls," said Zhao Chu. That's case number 7, Wu Men Quan. And no, it doesn't just mean if you've had some realization, let it go. Clean out what you've already attained. Aiken Roshi was, I think, like a Zhao Chu in our time. Quiet and subtle. I never heard or ever heard of anyone ever relating that he used a shout or blow in his teaching. Though in Teisho, he might occasionally give a cuts or strike the Teisho stand with his stick to demonstrate a koan. Dogen, who is very sparing in his praise of even the great old teachers, spoke as if in awe of Zhao Chu, calling him the ancient Buddha. High praise indeed. Zhao Chu's humility for all his tremendous skill, understanding, and deep practice is noteworthy. He never seems to have gotten puffed up. When he set out on pilgrimage, he said, "If I meet a 7-year-old child whose understanding is greater than my own, I will learn from her. If I meet a 100-year-old man whose understanding is less than mine, I will teach him." Given the Confucian hierarchies of society and the respect for age and elders implicit at this time, we can see Zhao Chu's uncompromising stand in truth. Societal conventions no longer an issue for him. Of course, this has nothing to do with ignoring ethics or conventional interactions. Zhao Chu is so with things that his comments draw no attention to themselves. They do the job before we even realize the job has been done. Like a skilled executioner, he's taken off our heads before we've even noticed he'd drawn his blade. But for him, it is not just skill, but humility. Rose and I saw the living ancestor of this tree at Zhao Chu's monastery in China when we were on pilgrimage there in 2006. As to that oak tree in the garden, or cypress tree in the garden, or oak tree in the front yard, the dialogue actually continued further. Wu Men, who put together the Wu Men Quan, gateless barrier or gateless gate, only selected a portion of the full dialogue. Here's the complete account from the record of Zhao Chu's sayings. Zhao Chu was asked by a monk, "What is the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from India?" Zhao Chu said, "The cypress tree in the garden." The monk said, "Reverend, please do not use an object to guide me." Zhao Chu said, "I am not using an object." The monk said, "What is the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from India?" Zhao Chu said, "The cypress tree in the garden." An object suggests that the monk saw Zhao Chu's response as implying inner and outer worlds. And he challenged him on this, expressing a personal refusal to buy into such a view. Or maybe he was looking for something more inner, and Zhao Chu was calling him on it. People these days often think of spirituality as an inner thing. Sometimes intuitions, or voices, or visions come into play. They might have their part as stepping stones, but there is something further. Yet as Aiken Roshi says, don't suppose that the resolution of this point lies in the identity of inside and outside. That is philosophy. What is the true fact? He adds in an article titled "Seeing into True Nature," in his usual trenchant manner, Dogen declared that the essence of Buddhism has never been to see into one's nature. Turning an object and turning the mind is rejected by the great sage. Explaining the mind and explaining true nature is not agreeable to Buddha ancestors. Seeing into mind and seeing into true nature is the activity of people outside the way. Set words and phrases are not the words of liberation. There is something free from all these. Green mountains are always walking. That is a koan reference. And Eiken Roshi continues. This is, that was Dogen. This is consummate freedom and is the hallmark of Zen, but it is freedom that arises from rigorous practice. It is not the indulgence of anything goes. At the same time, explaining is not the way, at least not the Zen Buddhist way. The way involves jumps, not logical sequence. On reading that green mountains are always walking, the logician will close the book. Moreover, the way is not introspection. Some contemporary teachers go astray on this point, and their instruction devolves into Jungian philosophy, or Jungian psychology, rather, or other practices. Such disciplines can have important roles in the development of human maturity, and when appropriate, the compassionate Zen teacher might refer students to good therapists or Vipassana teachers, but they won't learn much about peripatetic mountains. Green mountains are always walking. Other monks heard of Zhao Chu's remarkable response and came to test him and themselves. Once a monk asked Zhao Chu, has the oak Buddha nature? Shades of, does a dog have Buddha nature? That's a good question. Does an oak have Buddha nature? This time, Zhao Chu did not say mu, which literally means no or not. Instead, he says, it has. The monk said, when does the oak attain Buddhahood? In other words, if it has Buddha nature, then it could become like a Shakyamuni. When does the oak attain Buddhahood? Zhao Chu said, when the great universe collapses. The monk said, when does the great universe collapse? Zhao Chu said, when the oak attains Buddhahood. Right, exactly right. When the sky collapses and the ground under our feet is gone, everything, as Shakyamuni expressed at his own moment of great enlightenment, attains the way together. The sky is falling, but Chicken Little isn't afraid. She's overcome with joy. What's always been from the beginning is revealed. Here we touch Wu Men's commentary. If you can see intimately into the essence of Zhao Chu's response, there is no Shakyamuni in the past and no Maitreya in the future. I would add, and no oak tree in the present. What is there then? Please show that. How will you do it? Shakyamuni, of course, is the Buddha of our historical world cycle. Maitreya is the future Buddha, working hard right now in the Dashita heaven to develop all possible skill to free all beings from the anguish of delusion. In tens of millions of years from now, his or her time to get born on earth will come. Why is there no Shakyamuni in the past, nor Maitreya in the future, if you see intimately into the oak tree in the garden? It's not because now you're Buddha. Is it a loss? Alas, they're gone. The Buddha's gone. Maitreya's gone. Or is it, as Shakespeare says, a consummation devoutly to be wished for? When the universe collapses, the oak tree will make it clear. What is seeing intimately? What is seen into? How intimate is intimately? How essential is this essence? What is it? Where is it? Let's not settle for even subtle concepts. Conceptual Zen won't solve our problem, our fundamental anxiety about birth, aging, illness, and death. It can't give us peace in the midst of our daily impermanence. Fatal moments keep pouring from a tap we can never close. Useful and helpful and illuminating as they can be, all concepts, even the subtlest, deconstruct in the end. We cannot put ourselves into a concept in order to free ourselves from our bonds. Concepts at their best point to where we already are, where the concept itself comes from. And mindfulness, a great help and important in itself, only gets us to the gate. It's the beginning of where we can begin to begin. How do we go on? How do we pass through? This is our challenge, to be fully authentic, just as we already are, not simply working at being mindful, and at the same time, definitely not simply saying, hey, I'm cool just the way I am, no need to do a thing. Let the 10,000 things in, and even hard-won mindfulness is washed away. What remains? What is there? Woman's verse. Words do not convey the fact. Language is not an expedient. Attached to words, your life is lost. Blocked by phrases, you are bewildered. The words oak tree in the front yard are not an oak tree or a front yard. The words are not pointing to something like an oak tree. Yeah, the meaning is like an oak tree in the front yard. Nope, they're not an expedient. The universe collapses. An oak tree attains life. That attached to words, your life, your real life, the one you didn't even know you had, is already lost. Bodhidharma brought a teaching, not dependent on words or letters, but pointing directly to our own mind. He brought it from India to China, his life shining from the west down to the east. What is mind? It's not thoughts. It's not sensations. It is not thoughts. It is not sensations. Yet perhaps attached to these words, oak tree, in the front yard, if you keep at it, your old, self-centered, dualistic life will be lost. Wouldn't that be a good thing? Blocked by phrases, blocked koan by koan, stuck and bewildered, breath by breath, by breath, by breath count, by oak tree in the front yard. A real life begins, a miraculous activity of chopping wood and carrying water, as Layman Pong pointed out for us last week. Because we are bewildered, because we finally know that we are bewildered, we can cross our legs, experience our breath, examine a koan, and no longer trying to look like Zen Buddhists, simply let all we've clung to collapse. That is, drop away. Body and mind, drop away, as Dogen said. Body and mind, as well as things. Ah, oak tree in the front yard. The koan became a big deal in ancient Chinese Zen circles. After Chao Chu's death, Fai Yen came to Zhao Chu's student and possible heir Wei Chao. Wei Chao, terrible, I think we all are on Chinese pronunciations, so hopefully that's close. And it's unclear if he was his formal heir, but he seems to have been his successor, someone who had practiced with Zhao Chu for quite a long time. So he asked this guy, I heard that your late master had a saying, the oak tree in the courtyard. Is that correct? Wei Chao said no. Fai Yen said, anyone who's been around will say that a monk asked him about the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from the West, and that he answered, the oak tree in the front yard. How can you maintain he didn't say it? Wei Chao said, he really didn't say it. Please don't slander him. This last, by the way, seems to have been said with some ire, given the use of the word slander. Aiken Roshi asks, what was his meaning? Why did he say he really didn't say that? Please don't slander him. This response, by the way, is seen in Zen circles as quite brilliant, actually as good as oak tree in the front yard. An old Zen master commenting on it said, a good son does not live on his father's money. This dialogue, too, requires our careful investigation and clarity. Now, I have a note here to myself to read a page from Aiken Roshi's Wumen Quan. So, let's see what Aiken Roshi says about this. He really didn't say that. Please don't slander him. There's a wonderful Japanese story relating to this case that involves Shiro Munon, though it is sometimes attributed to Hakuin, his famous grandson in the Dharma. Munon had collected a large sum of gold for the establishment of a monastery and was returning home on foot with the money. A bandit, skilled in detecting travelers carrying valuables, followed him to an inn, where both put up for the night. When all was quiet, the bandit came to Munin Zenji's room and slipped open the sliding door. To his amazement, he didn't find a monk snoozing under his quilts, but an enormous oak tree rooted in the tatami mat, pushing its branches against the ceiling and walls. Trembling and confused, he withdrew to his own room. Next day, as the two men set out again, the bandit approached Munin and said, I am a great bandit. I know in one glance when someone has gold or jewels concealed on his person. I can steal such valuables without my victim feeling a thing. But last night I met my master. I found that you had disappeared and an oak tree was growing there instead. I realize that I am your inferior. I beg you to accept me as your disciple. Munin accepted him, and the bandit went on to become a great monk. He knew true intimacy when he saw it. Regarding this case, Kanzan, the founder of Myoshinji, said the koan of the oak tree has the function of a bandit. It steals everything from you. Kanzan was a marvelous Zen master who became the emperor's teacher, but he left no writings at all, and only this one saying is recorded of him. When Ingen, founder of the Obaku sect in Japan, came from China several centuries later, he visited Myoshinji and was told this story. Prostrating himself before Kanzan's image, he said, this one saying is superior to 10,000 volumes of Teishos. That's saying that the koan of the oak tree has the function of a bandit. It steals everything from you. Aiken Roshi continues, when I was a young student, I visited Myoshinji with Nakagawa Soen Roshi. We were told the story about Kanzan and Yinwon, but it made little impression on me. Soen Roshi, however, got very excited and bowed over and over to Kanzan's image. He took it in. I did not. If there was anyone rooted, who walked like a tree, it was Soen Roshi. So to continue, We must each accept our own bewilderment. We do not push past or reach beyond to become one with the oak. Dogen wrote, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be confirmed by the 10,000 things. In Genjo Koan, Dogen enlarges on forgetting the self. That the self advances and confirms the 10,000 things is called delusion. That the 10,000 things advance and confirm the self is realization. Aiken Roshi adds, we enlarge in turn, naming things, identifying things, confirming things is called delusion. Yet, human culture is based on such naming, and according to Judeo-Christian tradition, the first human project was to name the beasts of the field and the birds of the air. We would not be what we are, Buddhist, Christian, Jewish, or whatever, without advancing and confirming the 10,000 things. However, for purposes of realizing what that we really is, Dogen says that going out to beings can be termed delusion. The delusive assumption is that fundamentally there is an immutable self to go out. Just give everything to the practice. This breath, this question, this oak tree, and let the oak steal everything, all we've clung to, all we've identified with. No sky above, no ground below. Just let the acorns fall as they will. Just return again and again to oak tree in the front yard. Wait! My teacher had no such koan. Now, what do you make of that? We'll stop here and recite our vows for the many beings.